Hey everybody, I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us for ILTV's weekly program, One-on-One with Alan Dershowitz. We want to give you, our viewers, a chance to have your questions answered by Professor Dershowitz, one of America's greatest legal minds. He's a leading expert on criminal and constitutional law, civil liberties, and the Arab-Israeli conflict. Hi, Professor Dershowitz. It's so great to see you again.
Likewise. Thank you.
All right, so let's get started, Professor. As you know, we always open our show with special guests. Today, our first guest is Ambassador Dan Shapiro, who recently completed his tenure as United States Ambassador to Israel. He's currently decided to stay in Israel at the most prestigious think tank in the country. So let's hear what's on his mind.
Hi, Alan. It's Dan Shapiro. Until recently, the United States Ambassador in Israel, and now staying in Tel Aviv at the Institute for National Security Studies for a period of time to do some writing and some thinking about the U.S.-Israel relationship and the Middle East from the perspective outside of government. Thanks for all your contributions over the years to that relationship and to my own understanding of the very dynamic relationship between the United States and Israel. I actually have a question that's more about things happening back home, since I've been away from home for a number of years. And that has to do with this recent wave of anti-Semitic incidents. I'm interested in your analysis of what's behind it. I think we can stipulate to the fact that there is anti-Semitism among the left, on the far left. There's anti-Semitism on the far right. So I'm not making assumptions about the cause. I'm interested in your analysis of what's behind the recent wave of anti-Semitic incidents, of threats against Jewish institutions, community centers and day schools and synagogues and cemeteries. Whether you think the administration's response to it has been adequate and as it should be, and overall what you think needs to be done, both at a policy level and at an education level, to address this current wave. Look forward to your answer.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. You were one of the greatest ambassadors from the United States to Israel. The job you did was absolutely superb. And now that you're in a private life, next time I see you, I'm going to ask you the following question, which you may or may not want to answer. What did you really think of the United States decision not to veto the Security Council resolution that essentially said that the Kotel, the Western Wall, the access road to Hebrew University and Hadassah Hospital, and the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem is illegally occupied territory? I'd love to know what your personal views on that issue were. Obviously, as the ambassador, you had no right to act on your personal views, whatever they may have been. You were the representative of the United States of America. But I'd love to have a discussion with you about that issue. But now to your questions. Look, anytime there's anti-Semitism, threats to Jewish community centers, it's a terrible thing. Many kids had to be sent home. People were frightened out of their wits. Thankfully, there were no bombs found. There were gravestones toppled. It's a terrible, terrible thing. I do think that the administration should do more. I worry that the alt-right anti-Semites have been emboldened. I don't think for a moment that Donald Trump is an anti-Semite or supports any of these actions, but I do think he could do more and say more. And I do think Vice President Pence has done a very good job in helping to clean up the cemetery damage, but they can do more. But there is a big difference between the anti-Semitism of the right and the left. The anti-Semitism coming from the right is universally condemned. Nobody justifies it. Nobody supports it. It's condemned universally. But the anti-Semitism on college campuses that comes from the hard left is not condemned. In fact, it's often praised because it disguises itself as anti-Zionism. But if you just scratch beneath the surface, you see that there are anti-Semitic tropes throughout. Recently on college campuses, there were leaflets circulated saying white privilege has to end and it has to start with ending Jewish privilege. Leaflets equating Zionism with Nazism. We don't know for sure whether these leaflets come from the right or from the left. Of course, the hard right and the hard left have in common, historically, anti-Semitism. Jews, the nation state of the Jewish people, thrive at the center. And I've been trying to restore the dialogue to the center conservatives versus center liberals. I think that the administration has to condemn with equal voice anti-Semitism on both sides. Where I think there's been a big failing is I think that the liberal left has not done enough to condemn the anti-Semitism of the hard left, and the conservative right hasn't done enough to condemn the anti-Semitism of the hard right. I think we centrists have an obligation to speak to our side. People on the left have to be very vocal in condemning left-wing anti-Semitism. People on the right have to be very vocal in condemning right-wing anti-Semitism. It's so easy to condemn your opponents, for the left to condemn the right, for the right to condemn the left. It's crucial for each of us to condemn people on our side. So, Ambassador, I wish you well in your writing. I look forward to reading what you write. I know you will write brilliantly, as you were a brilliant ambassador. I remember being to your home in Herzliya and conducting a seminar. I look forward to continuing that tradition, whoever the ambassador is, and I look forward to a strong Israeli-American relationship, always bolstered by whoever the ambassador from the United States happens to be. So thank you again, Ambassador.
All right, Professor, thanks so much for your response. Joining us now in the studio are a group of young professionals and students we've brought together with the help of Stand With Us. We have Moraya Rodrigue, a lawyer and the president of the Organization of Belgians in Israel, and Tom, a student in technology marketing from Sapir Academic College in Sderot. So let's start with you, Moraya. It's not always easy to be a female leader of a major organization, and I understand you have a question about feminism in of itself.
Yes, but before that, let me just say that today is the Memorial Day of the Brussels attacks of last year in the airport. So regarding to what Ambassador Shapiro said about the anti-Semitism in the US, I just hope that the situation will not get to the same situation as in Europe. So now regarding the feminism question, I just read your latest article about why do women have to choose between feminism and Zionism? And I just couldn't understand the connection between those two important movements. Why does a feminist has to choose if to be pro-Israel or pro-Palestine and not be a Zionist? I would like to hear your thought about it.
Well, I agree with you 100%, and thank you for your great effort. And I think we ought to all pause and remember the tragedy at the Brussels airport and the other tragedies throughout Europe. And again, hope that those tragedies don't come to the United States and that Israel prevents acts of terrorism as well. You're absolutely right. Indeed, to be a feminist is to be a Zionist. Israel has had the greatest history of feminism, of course, of any country in the Middle East, and among all the countries in the world. Israel was the first country in history ever to elect a woman as the leader of the country who was not related to a man who had been previously a leader, and that's Golda Meir. You know, women are so important in Israel, in universities, on the Supreme Court, in politics, in the Knesset. The idea that you have to choose between Zionism and feminism is an absurd manifestation of what's called intersectionality, which is a code word for anti-Semitism. The anti-Semites coined this term in order to exclude Jews and to paint Jews as the oppressor. Jewish privilege, white privilege, Zionism. It's total nonsense. And feminists should be Zionists and Zionists should be feminists. The two are closer together than any movement. Some of the earliest Zionists, Henrietta Zold, was a great feminist and a great Zionist. We have other experiences in the history of Zionism. Zionism was always a movement of equality. The Declaration of Independence of Israel talks about equality based on gender and other factors as well. So be a feminist, be an environmentalist, be a supporter of human rights, and be a Zionist. The two work very, very, very well together. And thank you for your great work, and thank you, Stand With Us, one of the greatest organizations, grassroots organizations around the world that does so much to tell the truth about Israel on college campuses and in other venues. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Professor. Turning now to Tom. Tom, what would you like to ask Professor Dershowitz?
Hi, Professor. My question is this. Can you compare between the Israeli democratic system and the U.S. system? I know you have the Democrats and Republicans, and we have a variety of parties, and we could choose whatever we want. So I would like to know what is the differences.
Well, I think it's much harder to govern in Israel where you have so many parties. You need coalitions. I think that the threats that members of Netanyahu's coalition constantly make to leave make it very difficult to govern. I believe firmly that Benjamin Netanyahu wants a two-state solution, wants a negotiated peace, wants to resolve the Israel-Palestine conflict, and wants to control the expansion of settlements, but some in his coalition make that very difficult for him. So the difference is that an American president has complete authority. He is the executive. He alone decides who is in his cabinet. He makes most important foreign policy decisions without any intervention. And even if he needs Congress, Congress is under the same party right now as the president. Whereas in Israel's multi-party system, governing is far, far more difficult. And I would like to see a greater threshold for parliamentary membership in Israel than the current one, and thereby reducing the number of parties in the coalition. On the other hand, it's more democratic to have many, many parties than simply to have Republicans and Democrats. For example, I'm a lifelong Democrat, but I'm strongly opposed to the direction in which the Democratic Party is now moving. I threatened to quit the Democratic Party if Keith Ellison were elected as chairman. He lost, but he was made deputy chairman. And many within the left wing of the Democratic Party are moving away from Israel, and I find that appalling. But I can't join the Republican Party because my views on social issues, the right of a woman to choose abortion, gay marriage, gun control, the environment, a range of other important issues to me are inconsistent with the Republican Party platform. So there are benefits to both party systems. Each country has to pick a system that's more suited to its own population. And I think the two-party system is more suited to America, an enormously large country, and the multi-party system, ironically, is probably more suited to Israel, a smaller country. But I would like to see governance made more easier in Israel and decision-making made easier in Israel. And so I think both countries can use some reforms in their political systems. But thank you, Tom, for a terrific, terrific question. And again, thanks, Stan, with us, that you're a member of the great work it does around Israel, around the United States, and around the world.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to hear from the rest of our guests in a minute, but first we have a question from Male Adumim. So it's no surprise the question is about Male Adumim. Let's hear from Danny Gerwitz and David Brin.
Hi, Alan. This is Danny Gewirtz.
This is David Brin.
We are residents of Male Adumim. And Alan, I know you know my father from the old stomping grounds back at the days of Tampa Lake and Borough Park. I'm also the co-founder of American Football in Israel, where it's not just a outlet for aspiring football players, but actually a platform for coexistence. One of our quarterbacks was Itai Ashkenazi, the son of the former Ramatkal Gabi Ashkenazi, and I know he played in a semifinal game against some Palestinians. So there you have it. David is managing editor of the Jerusalem Post, and he will now ask you a question. So David, I'm going to throw the ball over to you.
Thanks, Danny. Hi, Alan. Looking forward to seeing you at the Jerusalem Post annual conference in New York City on May 7th. It's always great to hear your insights. My question is about where we're standing, about Male Adumim, a city of almost over 40,000 Israelis. There's been a campaign recently by members of Prime Minister Netanyahu's coalition to invoke legislation to annex Male Adumim. I'd like to hear your views on that, what you think about it. Is it the right time, the wrong time? What are the legal implications? And I look forward to hearing your answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you so much. Hey, I loved your father, Abi Gewirtz. He was the greatest ball player in modern Borough Park history. He was a couple of years older than me. He really taught me how to drive the hoop and take my jump shot from the corner. He was also a great camp counselor in Camp Maple Lake, where I really thrived and became an adult. And football in Israel, hey, that's great. Bob Kraft's a good friend of mine. And I know that Bob and his late great wife, Myra, have a football facility named after them. So I'm all in favor of football in Israel. Look, I'm a big Patriots fan. And if you want to talk about miracles, what the Patriots pulled off in the last two Super Bowls, they won them both unexpectedly at the not only the last second, the last one, of course, in overtime after making two-point conversions at the end of the game. Amazing, amazing stuff. So I hope football comes to Israel in a big, big way. Ma'ale Adumim. Look, Ma'ale Adumim will remain part of Israel forever. I've discussed it with Abbas. I've discussed it with the former Prime Minister Fayyad, and of course, I've discussed it with Israeli leaders. Ma'ale Adumim is part of Israel, will always be part of Israel, but it should not be annexed until a deal is made. It's de facto part of Israel. There will be, if there is a two-state solution, there will be land swaps, Ma'ale Adumim, Gilo. Other areas that are close to Jerusalem will remain part of Israel, but Israel will have to give up some land in the north in exchange for that. But I don't think that annexation at this point would be recognized by almost any country in the world. It would be a unilateral act and probably one that would make peace a little bit more difficult. I'm a strong supporter of two-state solution, of peace. I'm a strong supporter for maintaining Israel's connections to Ma'ale Adumim, Gilo, and the other areas that are close to Jerusalem and within the security boundaries of Israel. I think a negotiation should occur. I know that President Trump, who I recently met with, is anxious to bring about a negotiated deal. I know that Prime Minister Netanyahu is anxious to bring about a negotiated deal. I'm not so sure about Abbas. He talks a good game. He says he's interested, but when the opportunities come up, he never misses an opportunity to miss an opportunity. There was a period of time where Israel ceased all settlement activities in order to bring Abbas to the negotiating table, and he waited 9 months until basically the settlement freeze was over. The Abbas has to show that he's willing to make the kind of compromises that will bring about a negotiated two-state solution. In the meantime, Israelis ought to live and thrive, and Ma'ale Adumim, there ought to be no boycott of any products there. What happened to SodaStream should not happen to any other company. Ma'ale Adumim is an integral part of Israel, and it will be so recognized in any negotiated peace resolution.
All right, Professor Dershowitz. I now want to welcome Tamir Goldstein, a student in political science from Tel Aviv Academic College, and Nir Cohen Pereira, the manager of the Stand With Us Israel Alumni Network. Let's start with you, Tamir. What's on your mind for Professor Dershowitz?
Hey, Alan. My question is about branding, I guess. I just came back from Seattle, Washington, from the Pacific Northwest, as a shaliach for Stand With Us. And my job was to go from one campus to another, from high school to another, and basically talk about Israel and do pro-Israel activity. And one of the problems that I encountered was that in some areas, every time that we wanted to do a pro-Israel activity, people didn't show up. And every time that a BDS movement wanted to do some sort of activity, it was a full house. And I think there's a problem with the branding. How can we brand Israel as something cool, I want to say, and get people more engaged and more involved with pro-Israel activity?
That's a great question, Tamir. And it's a very difficult one because it's much easier to brand negatively than to brand positively. And the BDS hate movement finds people on the hard left supportive. Many of them don't understand what it is. They don't understand that it includes even people like me. Just because I'm Jewish and support Israel, I'm part of the BDS movement. How do I know that? Because Barghouti, the founder, has said that. He refused to debate me at Oxford University, just like Matisyahu was condemned, even though he's not Israeli, because he's Jewish. He was asked to condemn Israel. I was asked once, as a condition to speaking at Johns Hopkins University by a group of students, to start my speech by saying that Israel is guilty of war crimes. Of course, I refused to do it. They claimed I was harassing them because I refused to do it. That kind of branding is easy at colleges. It's hard to support Israel on campus today because it's not, quote, cool. Many faculty members who support Israel quietly or in their own synagogues refuse to speak out on college campuses. So you and I have a task, and stand with us as part of that job to increase positive support for Israel, make the world know about Israel's positive contributions to the world. Look, the best answer to BDS is for Israel to create products that the world can't do without. If Israel manages to create a system around the world where water can be taken from the air, let the BDSers say we won't drink that water. Let the BDSers say we won't use the pharmaceuticals that will save our parents' lives. Let the BDSers say we won't use cell phones and computers that have products inside them that are manufactured and designed in Israel. That's the best answer, and branding Israel in a positive way is important. So thank you for what you do and your efforts in the Northwest and other parts of the world on behalf of Israel and behalf of Stand With Us.
All right, Professor Dershowitz, we're running out of time, so we have very little time for our next question, but we do want to get your answer. Nir, who is sitting with us, it looks like you also get the chance to ask that final question, so make it a good one.
So hi, Professor. So when people try to make the case about Israel, they focus on America and Europe, but I think people are ignoring what's going on in Latin America and in Asia. I want to know what is your case about that, and should we do more over there? And on a different subject, one that is closer to my heart than other Israelis, what do you think about Omri Caspi moving to Minnesota?
Well, first, Omri Caspi, of course, I'm a big fan. He was injured, and it looked like maybe his season was over, but now he's been picked up by Minnesota, and I hope he will help them get into the playoffs. As some of you know, my son has been working for the NBA for many, many years. He is chief counsel for the Women's National Basketball Association and associate counsel for the NBA itself. So I follow basketball. I played basketball in high school, not as good as Avi Gewirtz, but I played basketball in high school. And Caspi is a great, great ball player, a great playmaker, a great defensive player. I hope we'll see him shine with his new team. First of all, Israel is doing a great deal in Asia. They are building bridges in India. They are building bridges in China. The prime minister has been in Asia and has done a great job, I think, in creating closer relationships between Israel and Asia. Latin America is a very tough sell. Venezuela, of course, is virulently anti-Israel, and we've benefited from that here in South Florida because we've gotten thousands of Venezuelan Jews who are creative and brilliant and productive moving to Florida. This influx of Venezuelan Jews has benefited Florida at the expense of Venezuela. I think other countries like Brazil and Argentina, more effort should be made to try to create better relationships. Colombia, other countries as well. I think efforts are being made. As you know, tremendous strides are being made in Africa, where Israel is really helping Africa to increase its productivity and increase its influence in the world. And I think Israel has played a substantial role in that. Look, Israel has become diplomatically a major force in the world today. And it has to go where the new developments are going, and that is Asia, South America, Africa. I think it's having a hard time in Western Europe, but even there, I think there are many more pro-Israel people than are willing to speak out. So Israel's diplomacy is very important, and I completely agree that it has to be extended to those parts of the world that are increasing in influence and increasing in power.
All right, Professor Dershowitz, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for coming in, guests, and thanks for your time, Professor. I also want to thank all of our guests who were here with us from abroad and from Israel. Now, if you'd like to ask Professor Dershowitz a question of your own, go to iltv.tv or our Facebook page and submit them. We'll see you again next week.